Hi everybody, welcome to the first video for the Cottage Garden Bella Box project series. Today we're going to work on the Enchanted Cottage Layered Scene. I've got everything laid out. We're going to look at all the materials. We're going to talk about the instructions, cutting diagrams, hoop size, everything that you need, and then we're going to jump in and make this project together. You get printed instructions in your Bella Box. The instructions for this project are on page 28. This is the 8x8 hoop version. If you have a 5x7 hoop, you want to look at the instructions for the bonus projects. And when you flip to page 8, we have instructions here for 5x7 hoop, all the fabric cutting and the multiple hoopings and how you can put that together in a 5x7 hoop. I've already gone through and prepped everything. When I looked at everything, I made a couple notes for myself with a pencil. I put an F next to things that needed fusible. If something was directional, I made a note. The micro velvet has a nap to it. And these little pictures of the fabric, they're kind of small. So I made a note before I cut everything that Hill 3 was solid and Hill 4 was the texture looking fabric. In your files, there's an instruction folder. There's a document called Materials Needed. You want to print that out or put it up on the screen to refer to it. There's a page here, page 4, for the Enchanted Cottage Layered Scene. There's a couple of items that are directional and that have special cutting instructions. If you've never worked with the cutting diagrams and you want to see some examples of this, I'm going to link a video for you below for the Sippin' on Sunshine quilt. I just filmed a video where I show you how to starch your fabric, how to read these cutting diagrams, and how to cut the fabric. I've already cut and labeled all the fabrics. I've used my Kimberbell fusible backing for those things that needed the fusible. And it's also noted we're going to need some light mesh cutaway stabilizer. We're going to go over all the materials, all the fabrics and threads, other things that you're going to need. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Kimberbell for providing me with this Bella Box. All the products are going to be linked below. As a Kimberbell affiliate, I receive a small commission if you shop using my links, but what's more important is it lets Kimberbell know that people are watching my videos. This project comes with a frame. We will frame this at the end, so have your frame out. Go ahead and set that aside for now. You're going to need your Kimberbell paper tape. There was a roll provided in the Bella Box. You'll need some scissors. I've got my Kimberbell snips and the double carved applique scissors. I'll link these for you below. They make a right-handed and a left-handed version of this scissor. I'm going to put these in my Creativity Blooms embroidered leather snap tray. I have a video showing you how to embroider a Kimberbell leather snap tray and a link to the free Creativity Blooms design, so I'll make sure that is linked below. Currently on my machine is one of these Schmetz Super Non-Stick needles. It's an 80-12 needle. These have been working very well for me. I'm going to continue to work with that. I also use regular 75-11 embroidery needles. Note that it's not a universal needle, it's an embroidery needle. Either one of these will be fine for this project. I've cut and labeled all my fabric. I have it on an 18-inch design board. I have a bunch of these that I bought from Fat Quarter Shop. If you ever see them go on sale, grab the 18-inch size. It's very handy. I just labeled everything with a little piece of a sticky note. I wrote everything down and cut it up and labeled all my pieces of fabric. So anything that needs fusible already has the fusible on the back. Things like the Hill, the micro velvet that has a nap to it, make sure you cut that the right direction. And also the garden is directional. If you cut things wrong and you don't realize it until you're making the project and you don't have enough fabric to make another cut, don't worry about it. You're really not going to notice. So do your best to make sure everything is cut correctly, but if you make a mistake, please don't panic. It's still going to look good. I have all my threads here. The thread colors are given as glide thread colors. The only glide color I have is white. Everything else is either Floriani, those are these big spools, or they're Sim Thread. Sim Thread is a brand that I got off of Amazon when I first started doing machine embroidery. I bought a box with a lot of different colors. It's been working very well. Let me show you my colors. I made a copy of the colors from the instructions and then I wrote down all my colors. Anything with an S in front is a Sim Thread. PF is a Floriani. Rather than holding them up one by one, as I'm stitching through the project, I will hold them up and show them to you. I will be working with an 8x8 hoop today. I'm going to load my stabilizer, and we're going to head over to the machine and get started. I'm on a baby lock meridian. Files are on my Bella Box USB. I've got my instructions here on a folding metal book stand. I'll put information on the book stand below. This is my Sippin' on Sunshine needle minder. Works great with the folding metal book stand. Holds things up really well, and you can move it as you work through your project and help keep track of where you are in the instructions. Let's bring up our file. Now, I only loaded the 8-inch hoop version on mine since I know that that's the size I'm using. You'll see all the files here. There's lots of projects for this Bella Box. We're going to work through everything. I'm going to do my best to do one project a week. At the same time I'm doing the Bella Box, I'm also working on the Sippin' on Sunshine, Hoop Studio, Perfectly Pieced, and Applique of the Month subscriptions. So sometimes it gets a little busy. Here's our file. The 8-inch hoop version is just one file. Again, if you have the 5x7, instructions are listed with the bonus projects on page 8. We're going to go ahead and hit set and embroidery, and we're ready to go. There's just one file. We're going to start with the color Cool Mint. On my machine, it shows this file as a 59-minute stitch out. Keep in mind when you look at the time on your embroidery machine, that's just stitching. We're going to be doing applique today, placing fabric, tacking down, trimming. You're going to need some extra time for that. Get your Cool Mint on the machine, and the first thing we're going to do is stitch the sky placement line. You want to grab your sky fabric, which should have fusible on the back. We're going to completely cover that placement line. Make sure it's covered. If this is your first Kimberbell project, you'll become a pro at doing this by the time you're done. Placement lines, cover, tack down, and trim. I like to add a piece of tape, hold that in place, and I usually double check. In addition to double checking to making sure that I've completely covered the placement line, I'm also looking for things like lint, fuzz, and around here, dog hair. If you've got cats that are near your embroidery machine, check for cat hair underneath. You would hate to get this all done and see a big cat hair through your fabric. Once you've got your placement line covered, your fabric taped in place, we're going to stitch the tack down line. This is all tacked down. Since this is our first project, I'll go ahead and show you how I do the trimming. My embroidery machine sits on an antique wooden table. This part here pops up. When it's time to do trimming, I can pull my hoop off and set it down here to trim. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the tape. You can use the tape more than once. I'll just stick it on my machine. I'll probably use it several times before I throw it away. Until it loses its sticky, I use the same tape. I like to use the double curve applique on anything that's fairly simple to trim. Sometimes we do projects that are really intricate and you need to trim a little bit at a time, and I'll use the snips for that. This is pretty easy to follow, and it has fusible, so I'll use the double curve applique. You can also use a duckbill scissor. Just go around and get close to the stitch line. Try not to trim the stitch line. If you do, don't panic because there's going to be a bunch of stuff going on, different fabrics. It's called the layered scene for a reason. It's going to get covered. If at any time when you're trimming you accidentally put a hole in your stabilizer, grab a piece of your paper tape, put it underneath your hoop, press it down, and keep going. This is how you trim. Just go all the way around. Really carefully, try not to cut the stabilizer, but again, if you cut it, you can tape it. Let's go ahead and finish trimming. You can save these pieces if you like. They've got fusible on the back. If you do a lot of embroidery and applique, you might be able to use that again. Here's what that looks like when it's all trimmed. I'm going to put this back on my machine. We're going to change to the color white. I actually have Glide White. And the next thing we're going to stitch out is the clouds placement line. I have the placement line stitched out. You're going to want to take this off your machine, get it on a table. We're going to be placing and taping our chiffon, so you want this supported underneath. You've got two pieces of chiffon. It says to use both. 1 and 2. And then I want to go ahead and tape it, and we're going to actually tape all the way around. Once you've got on your tape, go ahead and put that back on the machine. We're going to stitch the tack down in white. That's tacked down. Again, I would take this off the machine, put it on a table. We want to remove the tape, and it says in the instructions, trim each layer of chiffon close to the stitch lines. So you'll have to decide when you're trimming if you want to try to trim both layers at the same time or you want to trim one at a time. Whatever ends up being easiest. The chiffon is pretty thin and delicate. I think I'm probably going to try my snips for this. Let's have a look. So we've got 1, 2 layers. I've got my snips. I can easily cut through 2 layers. Not a problem. Might as well do both at once, unless you just want to do one at a time. Try to trim close to, but not on the stitch line. And there's going to be decorative stitching around the clouds. Go ahead and trim all the way around your clouds. Everything is trimmed. We've got the white on our machine. We're going to stitch out the clouds, satin outline, and swirls. Once your clouds are done, you want to switch to Cool Mint. We're going to stitch out the Hill 1 placement line. Going to get your Hill 1 fabric. The Hill 1 fabric is the micro velvet. It has a nap, which means when you brush it one direction, it gets kind of fuzzy like that, and then it smooths out as you brush it down. The directional cutting instructions were included, so as you're brushing down, that's the direction you want that on your piece. But again, if you miscut and you have to lay it with the nap going sideways, it's not going to matter. Nobody's going to know. Don't worry about it. So I do have my nap going down. Going to cover the placement line, add a piece of tape, and it's going to stitch out a tack down line and details. So it's not just going to go around. It will surround and tack it down, but it's also going to stitch some lines going across it to make it look like a mountain. So make sure you've got that tape down in place, and we'll stitch that out. This is all stitched out. When you read the instructions, it says on the bottom and side edges, and it does show that in red, trim the micro velvet close to the stitch line. These edges will be covered later. That's this side here, here, and here. On the top edge, and they show that with a black line, it says trim as desired. It's a raw edge applique. The top edge is this part here. What raw edge applique means is there's going to be no detail stitching. Like with the clouds, we have the satin stitch. There's going to be no additional stitching here. So if you want to leave extra and make it look like the mountain's fuzzy, since it's in micro velvet, you can do that. If you want, you can trim it as close to the stitch line as possible, however you'd like to trim that. I'm going to go ahead and trim that off camera. Here's my Hill 1 all trimmed. I used the double curve applique and just took my time and was really careful along this part of the micro velvet. I'm going to put this back on the machine and stitch out the Hill 1 Details B. Hill 1 is finished. It looks really good with the micro velvet. The next thing we're going to stitch out is the Hill 2 placement line. That's still in the color Cool Mint. Hill 2 is the felt, so go ahead and place your felt. Make sure you've covered the placement line. Then we're going to stitch out the tack down. This is similar to Hill 1. We want to go ahead and remove our tape. The left and bottom edges, so here and here, are shown in red. They're going to be covered. Go ahead and trim that, and then the parts that are going to be visible right here and along the top. So if you want to spend a little extra time on those, you can do that. It is going to be a raw edge finish. Go ahead and do your trimming. I've got that trimmed. The next step is to switch to the color Thyme and stitch out the Hill 2 Details B. The original color I pulled for that was this color. It's more like an olive green, and when I look at that, I just don't like the way that's looking. I'm not going to use that. I really don't have a good match for the color Thyme with my Glide color card. I use this color card and I find the color. Here's the color right here. It's almost like a light olive bluey green. I just don't have a good match for it. I found this color, which you can see is not even close. This is the color I'm trying to match. but this color I think will look okay on the felt. This is a new bro thread color. I actually had to take it out of the plastic. I also bought a set of these when I first started doing machine embroidery. I've got that color on my machine. Let's cross our fingers that it looks good. Let's stitch out our Hill 2 Details B. That's all stitched out. Looks okay. We'll find out when we get to the end. We're going to switch to the color Aloe, and we're going to stitch out the placement line for our Hill 3 fabric. Grab your Hill 3 fabric. I actually want my tape on the stabilizer instead of on the micro velvet and the felt. Cover the placement line and then tack it down and trim. For the next step, the instructions tell you to match your bobbin thread to the top thread. I'm leaving in my regular white bobbin thread. We're going to stitch out the Hill 3 Decorative Outlines and Details A. I can see a little bit of white, but I actually don't think that's the thread. I think that's the stabilizer. This piece did not have fusible on the back, her instructions. I am absolutely 100% okay with that. It's a hill. There's white stuff in nature. I'm good with it. Let's go ahead and stitch out our Hill 4 placement line. And if you're matching your bobbin thread, you're actually going to leave that in for the next several steps. I'll let you know when you need to change it back. The placement line has stitched out. Our Hill 4 fabric is the one that has the little bees on it. See the little bee? Make sure you place it right side up, unless you have, Daredevil acrobatic bees. So look for the bees, there's also musical notes. It does have a direction to it. We're going to place that, tape it, and then stitch the tack down. I'm noticing right as it's starting to stitch, this is shifting. I want to put extra tape on this one. Once you've got it tacked down, go ahead and remove your tape. Trim outside the stitch line, and then we're going to stitch out the Hill 4 Decorative Outline and Details A. Your matching bobbin thread is still in if you're doing that. After you've stitched that out, it says to change your bobbin back to the neutral color. So if you have the aloe thread for your bobbin, you want to go ahead and change back to your regular bobbin thread. We're going to stitch out Hill 4 Details B and the Hill 3 Details B. That's all stitched out. We are going to switch to the color Thyme and start working with our Hill 5 fabric. That color that I used before for my hill up here, it looks good here. Here's the color. I do not think it is going to look good with this fabric. I went ahead and pulled another thread. I think this color is going to look okay with this fabric. This is the fabric that's going to be behind the house, and it's going to have a nice curvy line and a little bit of detail, but then there's going to be a lot of other stuff going on. I'm going to go ahead and use this in place of the color Thyme. Once you've got your thread changed, we're going to stitch out the Hill 5 placement line. Grab your Hill 5 fabric. This does have fusible on the back. Want to cover the placement line. I've got a piece of tape here at the bottom. We're going to stitch the tack down and then we'll trim. Here's what that looks like once it's trimmed. The thread color I picked, great. It blends in so well. I had to go get my magnifying glasses so I could see the thread to trim it. Real good match for that fabric. We're going to slide this back onto the machine and we're going to stitch out the Hill 5 Grass Decorative Outline. That's going to run across the top. The grass decorative outline is all stitched out. It looks great in that color. It'll look great in the color Thyme too. This is more of a green rather than a bluey green. I love the way it turned out. The next thing we're going to stitch out is the Hill 5 Details A, same color thread. That color is looking great. Next we're going to switch to Aloe and we're going to stitch out the Hill 5 Details B. Next, we're going to switch to the color Cappuccino, and we're going to stitch out the path placement line. We want to cover the placement line with the cork. It does go all the way up right here, so make sure you get that top little peak covered. And I'm going to add some tape because when I let go of it, it pops up. I want to make sure it stays nice and flat. Once you've got it taped in place, you're going to stitch the tack down. You want to trim everything outside of the tack down line. There's no decorative stitching around the cork, so take your time with that. I'm going to have some nice big pieces here that we're not using. I would save those. Start a little embellishment scrap pile. You never know when you might want a little piece of cork for another project. Once you've got the cork trimmed, switch to white. We're going to stitch out our cottage placement line. You want to place your cottage embroidery leather. This is that pebble leather. The leather is a PVC product. It is not an animal product. Want to make sure we cover the placement lines. I would add some tape to that, and then we're going to stitch the tack down. Once that's tacked down, go ahead and remove the tape. Trim. Once you've got that trimmed, we're going to stitch out the cottage satin outlines. They're just going to stitch on the sides. Next, we're going to switch to the color Latte. We're going to stitch out the bricks fill. Next, we're going to change to baby blue and stitch out the door fill. Next, we're going to switch to Buttercup, and we're going to stitch out the windows fills. Next, we're switching to the color Cappuccino. We're going to start working on the roof. The first thing we're going to do is stitch out our roof fabric placement line. Grab your roof fabric. It should have fusible on the back. Want to make sure to cover the placement lines that just stitched out. I'm going to add some tape to that. I'm going to tack it down and trim. Once you've got that trimmed, you're going to stitch out the satin outline and shingles details. Next, we're going to stitch out the garden placement line. Going to place the garden fabric. They have us laying this at an angle. Kind of looks like rows in the dirt for a garden. Make sure you cover the placement line. I'm going to add some tape. Then we're going to stitch the tack down and trim. Once you've got that trimmed, you can stitch out the garden satin outline and the accent lines. We're still in the color Cappuccino. Next, we have the grass in front of the house and then the light plants fills. If you're following the colors, they do the color time for both of those steps. Since I changed the color for the grass, what I'm going to do is stitch out the grass with the same color, and then after the machine cuts the thread and it moves over to stitch out the plants, I'm going to stop the machine. I'm going to switch to this color. I've just pulled this off my thread wall, and I'm going to use this for the light plants fills. So if you've got the right colors, you'll do this all in one color. You're going to see me change my thread part way through. That's all stitched out. This would have looked okay here, but I love how I stopped it and changed it to the lighter color thread. I think that looks much nicer. We're going to change to amethyst next, and we're going to stitch out the flowers 1 petals fill, and then after that we're going to switch to buttercup and stitch out the flowers 2 petals fill, and after that we're going to switch to coral. This is the color that I'm going to be using for coral today, and we're going to stitch out the flower centers detail. I'm going to go ahead and run all of those together. Those are our colors for the flowers. Next, we're going to stitch out the geese feet. The color's marmalade. I pulled this color. I think I pulled this for the Hoop Studio Goose Stuffy too, and I'm going to do the same thing I did for the Hoop Studio Goose Stuffy. It's too bright. it's not going to go well. I'm going to pull this color instead, kind of a nice orangey peach color. So I'm going to put this on and we're going to stitch out the geese feet fills. That's looking good. The other color would have been a little too Halloween-y, really bright orange. We're going to switch to white and we're going to stitch out the geese bodies, and then after that we're going to go back to whatever you're using for marmalade and we're going to stitch out the geese beaks. I'm going to go ahead and run those two together. Next, we're going to switch to the color timber and stitch out the geese eyes and wings detail. The geese are all stitched out. You're going to leave the color timber on and we're going to stitch out the doorknob detail, the gable satin outline, the chimney fill, the windows details, and the stones fill. The stones fill is a separate step from everything that you're stitching out on the house, but I'm going to go ahead and run them together. It's all in the same color thread. That's all stitched out. We're going to switch to aloe and we're going to stitch out the dark plant fills. That's our last step at the machine. We're all done. I have a jump thread here and here between the little stones. I'm going to trim those and we'll take this over to the table. We're going to put this in the frame. We want to go ahead and take our project out of the hoop and then we're going to turn it to the back and trim the stabilizer close to the edge of the circle. Let's have a look at the back of our project. Here's the back. I think I would do this with scissors, not with a rotary cutter. I want to be extra careful. I would really hate to damage this. I'm even going to use small scissors. Take my time and trim around the project. I'm going to set this aside. You want to get your frame, get it out of the bubble wrap. Let's go to the back. It's got these nice little clips. Just move them so you can pull out the back piece. I'm going to flip this over. It doesn't really matter. Set that aside, set this aside. Grab your embroidered piece. It tells us to lay it right side down and place several small pieces of rolled tape on the back of the project. You can do that, or if you have double-sided tape, you can use double-sided tape. I've got some tape here from this project that we just worked on. I'm going to reuse it. Go ahead and loop some tape, put a piece at the top, the bottom, and then I'll cut this and make a couple loops and do the sides. You can hear the canary. I'll put a picture on the screen of Zazu the canary. Both of our birds are rescue birds. All we're going to do is stick it to the backing board. It talks about aligning the backing board with the project. It's round. Just stick it on the board. Try and line it up with your extra. It's going to hang over a little bit. That actually looks pretty good. Did a good job. Press it into place. If you notice anything is popping up or not laying flat and you want to add extra tape, you can add extra tape. Your house is going to stand up a little bit because it's that embroidery leather. Here's the top of the frame. It does have you write a little note, mark it top. I'm just going to do it from this side and then fuss with it. You can move it and turn it as you're working with it. I think I'm actually going to add some tape to it. As I'm putting it in the frame, do you see how this is puffing? I'm going to change the way I have this attached. I went ahead and added 3 really long loops of tape. I think that's going to help. It's not going to lie perfectly flat because of the dimensional elements. I just want to make sure it's nice and secure. When you look at the picture in the instructions, you can actually see it's got a little bit of waviness to it in the background fabric. A little bit off center. I'm going to just kind of pull it a little bit. I'm working with tape. It's easy to adjust. That looks better. Let's try putting that into the frame. Double check, make sure your little plastic things are out of the way. Here's the top. I'm going to set it in, flip it over and look. pull the string up like it's hanging. I'm actually going to hold it in front of my face. That's the easiest way to do this, I think. You can mark the top with tape, but holding it up really helps. Now I need to press this down, and I think we're going to be done. If you're having trouble getting these to turn, because you can see how they have to kind of almost come up a little bit now because we've got the backing board and our taped piece in there. So if you're trying to get them to slide and they don't slide because this doesn't really press all the way down, I just grab the screwdriver, just pry it up, lift it just a tiny bit. Be careful, they're plastic, you don't want them to break. If they break, remember this is the back of the piece. You could probably use duct tape and just run some tape around it, or once you make sure it's in the right spot, you can glue gun this and then just put a nice bead of glue around the outside. Let's have a look. Here we go. We are all done. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? When I hold it up by the string, I've got it centered just right. When I hold it up by the string, I've got it centered just right. It came out great. It is going to have a little bit of puff in the hoop. You've got dimension to it. Remember, you've got the embroidery leather, the cork here, several layers of fabric, your felt, your micro velvet. It's a layered scene, so it's not going to lay totally flat like a piece of paper. If you look at the picture in the instruction book, this is what I'm talking about seeing a couple of wrinkles. So you can see that that happens here with the sample as well. It looks beautiful. I love the way this turned out. This is going to go in my new craft and sewing room as soon as it's complete. I'll put the playlist for that below if you want to see what's going on. Make sure to let me know how yours turned out. Really pretty. Love it. I love the frame for this. This goes with the decor in my house. I almost put a pink door on the house. I think that would have looked cute too. Pink or lavender would look good, but I decided to stick with the baby blue to kind of match the background up here and tie it all together. Thank you for joining me today to make the Enchanted Cottage Layered Scene from the Cottage Garden Bella Box. We're going to continue working our way through all of these projects. Let me know which project you want to see next. I have an idea of which ones I want to work on next, but if there's something in particular you'd like to see, please leave me a comment below. Also on my channel are all the Kimberbell and Me Time Delivered subscriptions. So I do Hoop Studio Perfectly Piece Applique of the Month. I do full tutorials for those. Right now I'm hosting a Sippin' on Sunshine quilt along. We're going to make the whole quilt together. We've done the first two videos here, an unboxing where I show you everything, and the second video is fabric and project prep. I'll link this playlist for you below. I have all the links for this included as well. I'm also working through the home sewn tiling scenes. We've done April and May, and then when we get to the month of May, we're going to work on June. I've got a fun project in mind for the Sippin' Applique labels. You can see I've got some of the fabric already picked out. Thank you again for watching. I'll be back soon with more Bella Box projects. See you next time!